Hi kids, time for chapter 13, Deep Magic from the Dawn of Time. Now we must get back to Edmund. When he had been made to walk far further than he had ever known that anyone could walk, the witch at last halted in a dark valley, all overshadowed with fir trees. Edmund simply sank down and lay on his face, doing nothing at all, and not even caring what was going to happen to him next, providing they would not let him die. He was too tired even to notice how hungry and thirsty he was. The witch and the dwarf were talking close behind him in low tones. "No," said the dwarf, "it is no use now, O Queen. They must have reached the stone table by now. Perhaps a wolf would smell us out and bring us the news." "It cannot be good if he does," said the dwarf. "4 thrones in Cair Paravel," said the witch. "How if only 3 were filled? That would not fulfill the prophecy." "What difference would that make now that he is here?" said the dwarf. He did not care, even now, to mention the name of Aslan to his mistress. "He may not stay long, and then we would fall upon the 3. "Yet it might be better," said the dwarf, "to keep this one for bargaining with." "Yes, and have him rescued," said the witch. "Then," said the dwarf, "we had better get to do what we're going to do." "I would like to have it done at once on the stone table itself," said the witch. "That is the proper place. That is where it has always been done before." "It will be a long time now before the stone table can again be used for its proper use," said the dwarf. "True," said the witch. "Well, I will begin." At that moment, with a rush and a snarl, a wolf rushed up to them. "I have seen them! They are all at the stone table with him! They have killed my captain! I was hidden in the thickets and saw it all. One of the sons of Adam's killed him. Fly, fly!" "No," said the witch. "There need be no flying. Go quickly. Summon all our people to meet me here. Call out the giants and the werewolves and the spirits of those trees who are on our side. Call the ghouls, the ogres, and the minotaurs. We will fight. What? Have I not still my wand? Will not their ranks turn into stone even as they come on? Be off quickly. I have a little thing to finish here while you are away." The great brute bowed his head, turned, and galloped away. "Now," she said, "we have no table. Let me see. We had better put it against the trunk of the tree." Edmund found himself being roughly forced to his feet. Then the dwarf set him on his back against the tree and bound him fast. He saw the witch take out her outer mantle. Her arms were bare underneath it, and terribly white. Because they were so very white, he could see them, but he could not see much else. It was so dark in this valley under the dark trees. "Prepare the victim," said the witch, and the dwarf undid Edmund's collar and folded him down his shirt at his neck. Then he took Edmund's hair and pulled his head down so that he had to raise his chin. After that Edmund heard a strange noise. Whiz, whiz, whiz! For a moment he could not think what it was. Then he realized it was the sound of a knife being sharpened. At that very moment he heard loud shouts from every direction, a drumming of hoofs and a beating of wings, a scream from the witch, confusion all around, and then he found he was being untied. Strong arms were around him, and he heard big, kind voices saying things like, "Let him lie down. Give him some wine. Drink this. Steady now. You'll be all right in a minute." Then he heard the voices of people who were not talking to him, but to one another. They were saying things like, "Who's got the witch? I thought you had her. I didn't see her after I knocked the knife out of her hand. I was after the wand. Do you mean to say she escaped?" But just at this point Edmund went off in a dead faint. The centaurs and unicorns and deer and birds all set off to go back to the stone table, carrying Edmund with them. But if they could have seen what happened in that valley after they had gone, I think they might have been surprised. It was perfectly still, and the moon had grew bright. If you had been there, you would have seen the moonlight shining on the old tree stump. But if you had gone on looking, you would gradually have begun to think there was nothing odd about both the stump and the boulder. And next you would have thought that the stump did look remarkably like a little fat man crouching on the ground. And if you had watched long enough, you would have seen the stump walk along across to the boulder, and the boulder sit up and begin talking to the stump. For in reality, the stump and the boulder were simply the witch and the dwarf. For it was part of her magic that she could make things look like they weren't. And she had the presence of mind to do so at the very moment when the knife was being knocked out of her hand. She had kept hold of her wand, so it had been safe. When the other children woke up next morning, the first thing they heard from the beaver was that their brother had been rescued and brought into camp late last night, and was at that moment with Aslan. As soon as they had breakfast, they all went out, and they saw Aslan and Edmund walking and talking. There is no need to tell you what Aslan was saying, but it was a conversation which Edmund never forgot. As the others drew nearer, Aslan turned to meet them. "Here is your brother," he said, "and there is no need to talk about the past." Edmund shook his hand with the others and said to each other, "I'm sorry," and everyone said, "That's all right." And then everyone walked very hard to say something which would make them quite clear that they were all friends with him again. Something ordinary and natural, and of course no one could think of anything in the world to say. But before they had time to feel really awkward, one of the leopards approached Aslan, saying, "Sire, there is a message from the enemy who craves audience." "Let him approach," said Aslan. The leopard went away and soon returned leading the witch's dwarf. "What is your message, son of Earth?" asked Aslan. "The Queen of Narnia and Empress of the Lone Islands desires a safe conduct to come and speak with you," said the dwarf, "on a matter of which is much to your advantage as to hers." "Queen of Narnia, indeed," said Mr. Beaver. "Of all the cheek!" "Peace, Beaver," said Aslan. "All names will soon be restored to their proper owners. In the meantime, we will not dispute about them. Tell your mistress, son of Earth, that I grant her safe conduct on condition that she leaves her wand behind." This was agreed to, and 2 leopards went back with the dwarf to see that the conditions were properly carried out. "But supposing she turns the 2 leopards into stone?" whispering Lucy to Peter. I think the same idea had occurred to the leopards themselves. At any rate, as they walked off, their fur was all standing on their back, and their tails were bristling like a cat when it sees a strange dog. "It'll be all right," whispered Peter. "He won't send them if it weren't." A few minutes later the witch herself walked out on the top of the hill, and came straight across and stood before Aslan. The 3 children who had not seen her before felt shudders running down their backs. Though it was bright sunshine, everyone felt suddenly cold. The only 2 people who seemed to be quite at ease were Aslan and the witch herself. It was the oddest thing to see those 2 faces, the golden face and the dead white face, so close together. Not that the witch looked Aslan exactly in her eye. Mrs. Beaver noticed this. "You have a traitor there, Aslan," said the witch. Of course everyone knew that she meant Edmund. But Edmund had got past thinking about himself after all that he had been through, and after the talk he'd had that morning. He just went on looking at Aslan. He didn't seem to matter what the witch said. "Well," said Aslan, "his offense was not against you." "Have you forgotten the deep magic?" asked the witch. "Let us say I have forgotten it," answered Aslan. "Tell us of this deep magic." "Tell you," said the witch. "Tell you what is written on the very table of stone which stands beside us. Tell you what is written in the letters deep as a spear, as long as the fires of the secret hill. Tell you what is engraved on the scepter of the Emperor beyond the sea. You at least know the magic which the Emperor put into Narnia at the very beginning. You know that every traitor belongs to me as my lawful prey, and that for every treachery I have the right to kill." "Oh," said Mr. Beaver, "so that's how you come to imagine yourself a queen, because you were the Emperor's hangman? I see." "Peace, Beaver," said Aslan. "And so," continued the witch, "that the human creature is mine. His life is forfeit to me. His blood is my property." "Come and take it then," said the bull with his man's head in a great bellowing voice. Fool, said the witch with a savage smile. Do you really think your master can rob me of my rights by mere force? He knows the deep magic better than that. He knows that unless I have the blood, as the law says, all Narnia will be overturned and perish in fire and water. It is very true, said Aslan. I do not deny it. Oh, Aslan, can't we, you won't, will you? Can't we do something about the deep magic? Isn't there something you can work against it? Work against the Emperor's magic, said Aslan, turning to her with something like a frown on his face, and nobody ever made the suggestion to him again. Edmund was on the other side of Aslan, looking all the time at Aslan's face. He felt a choking feeling and wondered if he ought to say something. But a moment later he felt that he was not expected to do anything except to wait and do what he was told. Fall back, all of you, said Aslan, and I will talk to the witch alone. They all obeyed. It was a terrible time, this waiting and wondering, while the lion and the witch talked together. Lucy said, "Oh, Edmund," and began to cry. Peter stood with his back to the others, looking at the distant sea. The beavers stood holding each other's paws with their heads down. And still the talk between Aslan and the White Witch went on. At last they heard Edmund's voice. "You can all come out," he said. "I have settled the matter. She has renounced a claim on your brother's blood." And all over the hill there was a noise, as if everyone had been holding their breath and had now begun breathing again. The witch was just turning away with a look of fierce joy on her face when she stopped and said, "But how do you know that you will keep your promise?" "Urgh!" roared Aslan, half raised from his throne, and his great mouth opened wider and wider with the roar, grew louder and louder, and the witch, after staring for a moment with her lips wide, picked up her skirt and fairly ran for her life.